I was very happy with Warren helping me set up a page that you'll be able to print out or see online when this talk is over. But in the meantime, I want to make sure that everyone has a way to record and an idea or two if what I'm saying you want to recall later on. This is literally part 2 of a talk that I gave back in September. And part of of course, the topic was the paramitas, and I focused on 6 of them. Now, paramita, for those who are new to that term, literally means basket. It also means perfection. And I like to remind people that perfection has 2 meanings. It doesn't mean just perfect, no flaws, nothing's wrong with it, there's no mistake in it. It also means complete. So in the midst of being complete, it could be it could have achieved the word perfection. And complete for us in the Dharma means we've achieved the goal of our vows. And the paramitas are those tools that would help us achieve that. One of the things I mentioned the first time was the relief I felt with the 6 paramitas, because their language was very clear and very direct. When I first started with meditation and I attended Master Sheng Yen, Shifu, when I attended Shifu's lectures and he talked about the Heart Sutra or the 4 Great Vows or the 4 Noble Truths, it was way over my head. I couldn't get much of what he was saying, or it was just very confusing. But at one point, I was reading a bulletin that came to the Chant Center in Queens some years ago, and it listed the paramitas, and it was such a relief that the terms were very straightforward, the definitions were straightforward, and I was very happy to incorporate them into my practice. I will just go over the first 6 that I did back in September, just so we generally have an idea. The first is Dana Paramita, which means generosity. Generosity with both intention, and it could be either self-serving, what can I get out of it, or a genuine, it's a genuine generosity. It's wide range giving. It's not just money, it's time, it's vows, it's effort, it's friendship, it's all of it. One of the wonderful things that I really appreciate, I read an article where the writer quoted Ananda. Ananda is the cousin of the Buddha. And Ananda said to the Buddha, "Isn't community half of the spiritual life?" And the Buddha said, no, Ananda. Community is not half of the spiritual life. It's the whole of the spiritual life. So this generosity includes all sentient beings, our vows to help in any way that we can the sentient beings that we encounter, either personally in our own lives or through the vows of transmitting to all beings. It's the hallmark of human maturity, this idea of generosity. It's also the foundation of all the other precepts. When you are keeping it's the foundation of all the other paramitas. When you're keeping the precepts, when you're showing diligence, when you're spreading your own vows, that's generosity right at work. So it's wonderful that Dana is sprinkled into all the others. The next is the precepts. I vow not to kill, steal, sexual misconduct, and all the others. It's a moral foundation. And here's a bit of encouragement that I received. The 2 books that I used to instruct that first time was Master Sheng Yen's book, The 6 Paramitas. Warren was able to get it as an ebook online. It's also available through the Chan Meditation Center as a hard copy. Some people like ebooks, some people find that very convenient. But for those of you who like to hold a book, underline, go back to, it's also available for free at the Chan Meditation Center in Corona, New York. The other book that I used was The Practice of Perfection by Roshi Aitken. Excellent book, truly excellent book. What a soft, genuine teacher. Both Shifu and this monk are outstanding teachers on the Paramitas. So Roshi says that he asked his young monks and nuns, the novices, to take the precepts, I vow not to steal, and to add a phrase to it. I vow not to steal, and I will keep all other people's things in good order. I will not steal in envy or in even the smallest thing, like a paper clip from work. I mean, very, very in a high integrity. But what it showed me was that the idea that I had with the paramitas was not only to recite them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words, but to add my own phrase to them. And that's what I was hoping to share the last time, but making sure that I get to it this time. So then we have the precepts. Next is paramita of patience. No one will ever match us in action or intention. Yet we remain balanced in our reactions to that. Very encouraging, patience. Next is diligence. What gives us diligence are our vows and aspirations. We can reaffirm we are practicing, not just for ourselves. And do you see that tone of generosity? We are not just practicing for ourselves. Don't pass up any opportunity to practice in day-to-day matters, through the breath, through mindfulness, through concentration, through awareness. I've discovered for myself that the term present moment is very good. I keep hearing it, I keep reading it, the present moment. But moment puts an image of a clock, the ticking of seconds, whereas I've shifted now to present experience. Can I place my attention on the present experience? And that has landed me even more firmly in being attentive. So I include that as a remark to don't pass up an opportunity to practice in day-to-day matters. The present experience is that opportunity. By asking, what is the purpose of my practicing? Everything flows from that response. We can make small pledges to correct bad habits, read Dharma, take notes, and reflect. A teacher of mine told us, sitting meditation is focused on our method, no doubt about it. And yet when it's time to stop, to take a minute, a half a minute, 2 minutes, and reflect on the past sitting. The reflection helps see what it is and in what direction your mind went, how stable it was. That reflection element has helped me a great, great deal. And that's contained in the precept of diligence. Like a Buddha who had great diligence, it's the strength of character. You can't go wrong with that. Next is meditation. There are many instances that we can use meditation. When we read the sutras, when we bow to our cushion or to our chair before we meditate, prostrations, walking meditation, putting mind fully on the present moment, the present experience. Yesterday, I taught a beginner's class, and I was reminded Gogu is a very excellent teacher from Dharma Drum, CMC, and he encouraged us to use 5 instances in which we do a mundane action, such as putting toothpaste on the toothbrush, inserting a key into the keyhole, All you pick your own, tying your shoelace or putting on your shoes, turning out a light at night or turning the light on in the early morning, turning on the tea kettle or plugging in whatever you do all day, every day, I mean, part of your all day routine, focus on 5 things so that as you do it, you're with the breath, you're with the action. And that's a way of not passing up any chance to meditate. That mindfulness is very important. It's not so much an issue of whether to meditate, but how to meditate. No grasping, no judging, no blocking anything, settling in and relaxing. We use that analogy of the snow globe or river water, taking a glass and going to a river. And of course, that water is going to be murky, gravel, dust, sticks, little bits of everything. And it takes a little bit of time for that silt, those article and particles, to settle. Same thing, realistically. It's not so much an issue of that we're meditating, but how we meditate, not chasing after, not frustrated, accepting, and continuing as we practice. The authenticity and the sincerity build character. It's an effort to live in a way with integrity and honor. I mean, these are high ideals. And it's not sacrifice, it's building something in which we have a spiritual health. And what can be finer than spiritual health? Again, in this class yesterday, I had mentioned how even 20, 30, 40 years ago, meditation was, or Dharma, or Buddhism, or any kind of self-investigation like that was uncommon in our everyday life. But now when you read magazines, on just social media and on health issues, it generally lists, in order to be healthy, the right diet, the right exercise, the right sleep, meditation. Meditation in that lineup is very true. It is very beneficial. But the effort to sleep, the effort to eat, the effort to walk and do some sit-ups, it's so entirely different from the mindfulness and the spiritual tone of meditation. It turns out that one of the participants yesterday was actually a doctor. And he said, you know, it's true. We do offer meditation as a way for someone to maintain his or her health. However, we don't tell them how to do it. So he said that he learned a lot on the strategies and how he can maybe add a sentence or two when he encourages that practice, which I found pretty interesting. The last of the 6 is wisdom. It's not problem-solving wisdom. It's not trying to unsolve an issue that you're having, but a spacious awareness. We all have the potential, and it must be cultivated. Cultivation has that essence of gardening, right? Can you picture working with the earth, making it fertile with fertilizer, food scraps, whatever it is, compost, and making sure that the seeds and the growth of it are able to grow in a very sturdy and a way of nourishing us. So that authenticity and that spacious awareness is our nutrition for spiritual life. So that's essentially what I had said last time. I highlighted what Master Sheng Yen had taught me, some of his words are here, and what Roshi Aitken had spoken about, and his words are here. I found it very, very useful and very, very grateful that the terminology was not only very direct and straightforward, but it speaks to the heart. And the heart must be engaged. Our compassion must be engaged to carry it out. So it's generosity and morality, patience, perseverance, concentration, meditation, and wisdom. Each of them sound very uplifting, and they have been. And tonight I'd like to share more of them And the one thing that I found is when I contacted a friend of mine who's an editor for Shifu's books, and the first 6 that I've just said are very common in Theravadan, in Mahayana books, in Tibetan, in Northern school or in Southern school. It shows up a consistent 6. But the next 4, this is the quote that I read, the lists are notoriously unfixed. In other words, for every book that we might read, the next 4 are quite different. I was going to use the ones that Roshi Aitken has, and I just wasn't so familiar with them, and I didn't want to suddenly take on something that I wasn't using myself. So I stuck to the 4 that I do say. And the 4 are metta, which is loving kindness. Of all the, I want to say, not secular, but the Dharma centers now, they focus mostly on this loving kindness. It's a very gentle approach for modern day people to put their minds on something wider than themselves. So metta, I think loving kindness, is a very common phrase nowadays. The next is upekkha, which means balance, being equanimous, being equal in your mind. Next is satya, meaning truth, that spacious awareness that is already innate in all of us. That common analogy is of a beggar with an old tattered coat that he just happened to pick up somewhere. It's keeping him warm, but it's dirty, it's ripped. What he's unaware of is a diamond sewn into the hem. He is rich beyond talking, but he is unaware of it. And that comparison by our teachers is that we have a great diamond within our nature, and that is the truth of who we really are, that spaciousness, that awareness, that wisdom. The last is aditan. It means determination, moment to mindful moment. That's the challenge, moment to mindful moment. That's where the advice of those 5 common events. If you have heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, he has his communities throughout the United States and in Europe. And by chance, Dharma Drum Retreat Center has a center in Pine Bush, New York, and Blue Cliff, one of Thich Nhat Hanh's organizations, is about 2 miles away. And I visited them on occasion, and it wasn't a retreat or anything. It was simply an ordinary day. And the nun that was showing us around was very, very friendly, of course, very generous with her time. And at a certain moment, there was a chime throughout the entire building's location. Everybody stopped. Everybody breathed in and breathed out. Breathed in and breathed out for about maybe a minute, no more than that. And then we all went on with what we were doing. Every 15 minutes, that organization has some kind of anchoring strategy to bring everybody back to that present moment, to that present experience. That's what adhitthana means, that determination to be mindful moment to moment. Excuse me. It certainly doesn't mean stressful. It doesn't mean being tight. It means where you are is where you are. What you're doing is what you're doing. Nowadays, even my friends who are practitioners, I always start phone calls with, "Are you sure this is a good time? Am I interrupting something?" "Oh, no. It's great. I'm glad you called." But within a minute or 2, I hear the clanking of a pot or the rustling of some papers or moving something or another, and bam, they're off target of this conversation. It drives me crazy. It's so commonplace. There's no moment to moment. I mean, even watching people on their phones driving as they're driving, it's scary. It's just a very scary thing. I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, let's move on.
So Nancy, would you like me
Yes.
to share the 10 paramitas on the screen, or
Well, if you'd like to, sure. Will it lose anything in terms of sure. Thank you, Warren.
yeah, I think it works.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank
Can
you.
you see it?
I can.
Yeah, so
I see
basically,
half of it. I
here we
see
go.
half of it. Okay, there you go. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, so now I would like to go back to and speak about each one more in depth. Upekkha paramita, balanced and equanimous. May I have a balanced and equanimous mind. I see certain circumstances. For example, I've gone to yoga classes, I've done some workout exercises, and I'm very happy to see and realize that I'm flexible, I'm agile. Excuse me. And yet, when I do other poses, I lose my balance completely. And I find that agility in some of my activities and that loss of balance in others matches completely with my practice. I lose balance in many ways with being anxious or being frustrated or being very disappointed. Like I had mentioned earlier, Shifu had said, it's very unusual to find people who think as we do and do as we do. And yet I have this high expectation that's the case, especially family members and friends. And so I lose my balance completely when I feel that frustration and that disappointment and that, hey, that's not fair, completely lost. There's a great teacher, Krishnamurti, and as he was getting older and he was nearing his own death, his practitioners, his followers asked him, what has made you so successful, so balanced in your life? And his response was, I don't mind what happens. I don't mind what happens. I couldn't imagine that when I heard that. I don't mind what happens. I bring that phrase up in my mind as I'm feeling some kind of frustration. I don't mind what happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, yet the effort is there. It takes awareness to see when self-serving greed and aversion and self-checking arises. We strive for a surer footing, especially when it comes upon hard times. There's a danger of losing our confidence, of feeling lost, becoming discouraged. Face those times bravely, developing compassion and balance. Have you ever seen one of those plastic, it's almost half the size of a large child, and you punch it and it comes back, and you punch it and it comes back. It comes back, but it loses its balance so easily. So as much as I felt like that at many instances, I realized that in order to be firmer, to keep in mind the balance and equanimous, just continuing with that Upekkha paramita. The next Sasha, may I know the truth who I really am. All our personal vows and land deep encouragement and give strength to our usefulness. We realize we go from the singular to the plural, from not only working on with my own vows, but to work and help others with theirs. Not only am I working for the sake of my own life, but the sake of others, the sake of my own practice, but the sake of others. To go from the singular to the plural. We release the hold on our small self and divert our energy to a wider community of sentient beings. There's that interconnection again, that community of all sentient beings, where the Buddha said that the real practice is community, that idea of connectedness, the interconnectedness. It makes us less grasping, less holding on to the small self, going to a wider self, to the no self. No self in the sense of grasping. Our conventional self is there. Our conventional self is active. It's reasonable. It's responsive. And yet the grasping mind, the ego mind, is quite diminished. There's a feeling of spaciousness. As Dogen, one of Japanese great masters, it's with the experience of other things that we find our truth of interbeing with others. This spaciousness was a word that I was able to have in my mind when I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 7th grade students for 19 years. And among the teaching community, if I met somebody who teaches kindergarten, I said, I don't know how you could do that. It's like a classroom of kittens. But 7th graders, I also got that reaction. People would say to me, how could you possibly teach 7th graders? They don't even know themselves. They're in the middle of two worlds, childhood and teenagehood. And yet I found them to be wonderful. And of course, they were themselves, hard to control, hard to rein in. If they weren't interested, that was it. They weren't interested. So I had a strategy. After a time, I mean, how many times and how many years can a person yell? So I brought in my Tibetan singing bowl, you know, that kind, you tap it and it, right? I would tap that. And as much as I used it throughout the year, it was always, what is that? And it would grab their attention. Even though they knew I had it, even though I used it, it grabbed their attention. At other times, I would sit on a chair and I would just put in my mind, spacious. Just the word spacious. It calmed me down, and man, was it magic. It just calmed everyone down. I might have had to say, okay, that's enough, that's enough. But putting it in my mind, the word, just the word, spaciousness, I couldn't believe it. And it had the intention behind it, the intention of respecting them, the intention of caring about them. It wasn't just a word, an empty word, a vocabulary word, for instance. It had a power behind it. It was the power of my meditation from the morning. It was the power of my saying the paramitas in the morning, day after day, year after year. It's all connected in that way. It was really very charming to see that, and very, very easy, meaning creating ease. Aditan, moment to moment, determination, mindful determination. Instead of thinking of the paramitas, we act on them. We don't use them as concepts. We are wholehearted in what we can do in our present stage of practice. Opportunities are boundless. By observing our body, our speech, and our mind, we can observe ourselves at a deeper, consistent level. We are clear about the root cause of our poisons, greed, hatred, and ignorance. We are vigilant before they even arise. I'm sure some of you who are practitioners, especially Master Sheng Yen, if you've attended any of his retreats, this idea of determination and diligence, that moment to moment mindfulness. It's a story that I really enjoy talking about. We practiced this on a retreat a few times, and it was very effective. And it's the story of ancient times, the story of a thief who was finally caught in the act of thieving, of robbing, and he was meant to be executed. And he was brought before the king. And he pleaded with the king, please, please, please spare me. I don't want to die. Please don't execute me. And the king had somewhat of a kinder heart, and he offered the thief an opportunity. And he said, I will let you live if you can complete a task. And the task is, I will give you a golden bowl, and I will fill it to the brim with oil. And you will hold this bowl on a road in the forest. And I will have my soldiers standing by the side of the road with their swords ready. You must walk the distance of this road. The thief saw his chance. Of course, I'll do it. They got him prepared. It was true, it was a forest. He could hear in the distance wild animals. The road was uneven, sticks, limbs, holes in the ground, all sorts of things. And yet he held that bowl. He held it with all of his life's energy, and he walked steadily and slowly. He gave no mind to the sounds in the forest. He gave no mind to the swords gleaming in the sunshine, ready to chop off his head. He gave no mind except his own determination to save his own life, to keep that oil level, not to spill a drop. He walked and walked and walked. When he finally arrived at the king, sitting on a bench, he dropped the bowl on purpose, and he said, I am prepared to die. How did that happen? He was so focused. All the fears of life and death vanished completely. All the mundane worries that we keep in our own hearts and our own minds vanished completely. Where did it go? It didn't go anywhere. It went beyond that conventional, clinging, grasping, worried, afraid of death, clinging to life mind. He was beyond it. The king, of course, let him live. He was so touched by the experience himself, the power of that present experience saving a man's life. So that determination, can you imagine it? On retreat, up at DDRC, Dharma Retreat Center, there's a very wonderful lake. And the monks and nuns were at the lake, and they were filling bowls with water, the lake water. And we were instructed to take our bowls and walk on a gravel path. It was uneven. And then we came to the road that went downhill. So that was pretty hard to keep our bowls without tilting as our bodies tilted a little, and then walk up a driveway and then walk in front of the Dharma hall. We placed our bowls in front of the main doors, and it was very beautiful to see these offerings, lying in the sunlight. It was very lovely. But the idea of not spilling, because I knew there was no soldiers on the road, and I knew that no one was going to chop my head off, it was with attention. It was a novel experience, but we all admitted later on, we spilled a little. I mean, it was inevitable. It was a whole different circumstance. It was a teaching, but it wasn't life and death experience. But the teaching was our perseverance, our willingness to give it a try, to see how the mind is steady or not steady. That kind of reflection is very, very valid in helping us further and strengthening our vows. I put metta last because metta can be a very in-depth talk in itself. It can be a 1-hour lecture. It can be a half-day retreat. It could be a whole lifetime. And the idea of it is loving kindness in every instance. And the breakdown of loving kindness is for yourself, for those in your life, for a neutral person, and the term is enemy. But it's easier to think of anyone that you might have conflict with. Okay. It could be somebody in your family that who you love, and yet you're having conflict. Therefore, it feels like enemy, but it certainly isn't. It's hopefully a temporary situation. The wording is somewhat standard, yet it can be changed. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you be at peace. Sometimes when a friend of mine or a relative is not doing well, I would get a get well card, write a little note, send something, and I would insert in the letter the metta practice. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, and may you be at peace. So they might get rid of the card, but I hope that they don't get rid of the little post-it note or the smaller card. And going back to my 7th grade students, there were those boys and girls who people threw up their hand and said, there's no working with this kid. He's damaged goods already. I never thought that. So I would take these children one by one at various times of the day, like in homeroom, at lunchtime, end of the day, and I would give them the metta practice. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I be at peace. But I also invited them to write their own words. May I be attentive. May I be respectful. May I be my own good friend. And I would bring them into the hallway one and one and just say it with them privately. I'll never know the impact of that. I'll never see these children again. I've moved from another state, from Connecticut to Virginia. I'm in touch with my teacher colleagues, but we don't know where these kids end up. It's too many years and too many kids. And yet there's bound to be that residue somewhere. You'll never know. You'll never know. So I just think that this loving kindness idea is just so ennobling, and that we can do this for others. And it is one of the paramitas, and it's also one of the it's also in another category of I can't remember which one it is. When we act in accordance with the needs of our circumstances and the needs of others, and in our own needs, we allow ourselves to grow and mature in a further way. In terms of a neutral person, the idea of it's made me very sensitive to a cashier to say thank you. The other day I was putting out recycling, and just at that exact time, the garbage truck was passing. And there's always that guy hanging on in the back of a truck, and I saw him and we just nodded to each other. We placed our hands on our hearts to each other. It was amazing, outstandingly wonderful. That's the fruit of metta practice. That idea that spontaneously you smile or nod or respond to a total stranger. And that's the quality, again, of community. Ananda. Community is all of the spiritual life. After a while, it's just so magnificent how one thing and the other and the other and the other, all these elements of the Dharma are knitted together, and they just keep binding one another to another. And that it's a net for us, and it's a covering for us, and it's a wrapping around us in every aspect. I mean, as I talk about this, it's just so uplifting, because the growth that a person goes through when you stick to it is astounding. I think of myself as a baby meditator, and oof, what a mess. But now, just so grateful, just so very grateful. So what I had asked Warren to do was to put it online, and it's on our screen. And I want you to do what I have done. I want to encourage you. And this is something that's very important to me. Um, when I went on retreats, as I just said, I was just not very adept at sitting on a cushion and meditating. Leg pain, frustration, boredom, you name it. However, when on my first retreat, Shifu said, "Okay, everybody, get your jackets on." It was like that kindergarten kid. What? We're going outside? We're going to go and play? It was just magnificent. And he gave us the experience of walking meditation out in nature. And it saved my life. I was just so grateful that I could use my present attention, my present experience of placing my foot on the ground, putting my attention on each movement. It just saved me completely, so that when I went back to my cushion, I could do it. So my point is, there's a great deal of variety. Even here in my own home, if I feel my restlessness is too strong and I know that it's time for my morning meditation, I'll go from the one end of the bedroom to where my cushion is and slow walk to it. Or I might go from the kitchen to my bedroom and slow walk just to help simmer down, calm down, using the steps to guide me, relax me, that present moment awareness. The other thing that helped was morning and evening services. Now, some of it was chanting in Chinese, some of it was the Heart Sutra, which I could never understand at the time. Some of it was the Four Noble Truths. Okay, I could get that. But chanting saying the paramitas was very important. And I realized that I once had an opportunity to spend 2 days in the Chan Meditation Center before a retreat started. My daughter was already with her aunt, so I asked permission if I could sort of do a warm up, because Shifu, Master Sheng Yen, often told us, you can't go on a retreat and be ready to go on a retreat on the day it starts. You have to be prepared in advance, a week, 2 days, 3 days, get up a little early, meditate a little bit longer, make sure you practice at night so that it's not a terrible physical hardship when you arrive. So I asked, may I please have the opportunity to spend 2 days with the Sangha? And I went to work, but I came back and I ate dinner with them and did evening service. Next day, got up as early as they did morning service. So I incorporate morning service into my practice. I do not use what the monastics use. I do not use what we use on retreat, but I do say the paramitas. I do transfer my merit, and I do metta practice. I say the names of people I know who are ill, and I say the names of people who have died in the, I'm not sure what country, if it's Chinese tradition or it is definitely the practice that for 49 days after a person's death, we can influence their moving on in a sense. So for 49 days, I keep a card of those who I know who have passed away. So my morning service is the 10 paramitas with my expressions, and it's then the transfer of merit, and then it's saying the names of those whom I care about and who I know have passed. So if it takes me 6 minutes, I might exaggerate, and it does take me 6 minutes when I'm focused. Sometimes my mind travels and I've stopped. I come back. But most of the time, especially saying it out loud, it keeps me very much on target. So that's really what I had hoped to do back in September. Not only mention the paramitas, but also tell you to incorporate them as part of after meditation, because of the meditation, that transfer of merit and the paramitas that you recite become very, very powerful. They become very meaningful. The energy is contained with it. Okay, so again, the purpose of putting it online, if you want to print it out, or as I said, if you have paper and pencil, for generosity. What words would you apply to that? I mean, simply, you can say, may I be generous and helpful. For precepts, may I keep the precepts. And now I would follow Roshi Aitken and say, I would pick one. May I be truthful in all the things that I say to people today. May I be sincere. So I'm going beyond just saying the precept itself. Patience. May I be able to bear and forgive all those who might hurt me, and may I forgive myself. Perseverance. May I be determined to keep my mind on the present moment. Meditation, concentration. May I attain concentrated mind for the sake of others. Wisdom, prajna paramita. May I develop the wisdom to be able to aid anyone in any capacity. Loving kindness, metta. May I be generous in mind, word, speech, and action. Balance. May I have a quantumous mind. I don't mind what happens. Satya. May I know the truth of who I really am. I am free. I am free. I am free. I am spacious. Determination. May I be determined, moment to mindful moment. Moment to mindful moment. Moment to mindful moment. Amitofo.